Let me swear on that, sir. All right. You solemnly swear affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth to the best of your knowledge, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Sir, could you please tell us your full name?
Dennis Larson
Where are you employed, Mr. Larson?
at Diversified Commercial Real Estate Division of Rose Real Estate.
And could you tell the jury what is diversified commercial real estate?
It's a commercial real estate office, and we deal basically in commercial real estate, industrial real estate, offices, just about anything that's not a house.
Where is your office located?
8037 Euclid Avenue, Munster, Indiana.
And what is the territory that diversified commercial covers?
Basically, we cover northwest Indiana and the Chicago metropolitan area, including all the suburbs.
And more specifically, do you cover the area around Crown Point, including the city of Crown Point?
Yes.
Do you do commercial leases?
Yes.
Do you do commercial sales?
Yes.
Now, what is your role at diversified commercial?
I'm a real estate broker, and basically try to get listings or sales, represent buyers or sellers in the market. And when we're trying to get buyers, we approach them and look at their properties and talk to them, and then we come back and do comparable properties so we can tell them intelligently what we think their property would sell for.
Do you also do that for sellers?
Yes.
Now, you said you're a broker.
Yes.
You have to be licensed to be a broker?
Yes.
Let's talk about some of the designations. Is there entry level to be a real estate agent?
There's real estate salesman or person.
And that's the first level, and someone you'd see that has a sign out in the yard and sells your home, what have you.
Yes.
And then you have a real estate broker?
And then broker is the next where you can work independently without another broker overseeing you if you wanted to.
And you're a broker?
Yes.
How long have you been a broker?
I'm going to guess for about 25 years or so, maybe 30.
So back in the 80s?
Yes, and salesman before that.
How long have you been buying or selling commercial real estate?
Since 1973, I believe.
Now, when you're brokering real estate, you have to come up with an opinion of the value of the property that you're buying or selling or leasing.
Yes.
Is that something that you've done routinely over the last 30 years?
Yes.
Whether it's for a buyer or a seller or a tenant or a landlord?
Yes.
How many times are you called upon in the average year to come up with an opinion of the value of real estate?
You don't get every listing and everything, so I'm going to say could be from 60 to 80 times a year.
And for how many years has that been the case?
At least 30. It could be all 40, but maybe not that high during all 40 years.
So you've had to come up with an opinion of value for real estate over 1,000 or 1,500 times over the last 30 plus years?
Yes.
Now, are there different approaches you can use?
Yes.
And let's go through them. Is there a cost approach?
Cost approach.
What is the cost approach? Can you tell the jury?
The cost approach is basically what it costs to build a building today. It's replacement cost.
So what it would cost to rebuild the property?
Yes.
And is there a sales comparison approach?
Yes. Sales comparison is where you look, depending on the property that you're analyzing, but you can go back more than 1 year. You look at what properties sold and how they are compared to the property that you're either going to list or you've got a buyer for.
And then is the third one the income approach?
Income approach. That is mainly for commercial, industrial properties, and that's based on the net income, and from there you get a cap rate, find out what buildings have sold for, and that determines the value that you should be able to sell it for.
And do you employ one or the other, or even all three of those approaches, depending upon the particular situation you're asked to come up for an opinion of value on? You
can, but in housing, comparable sales is really the indicator. Doesn't matter if it costs you $1 million to rebuild the house. If sales indicate a value of $600,000, the value is really $600,000. And in commercial real estate, it's based on net income after expenses. So you have your gross income, and usually in commercial real estate now, the tenants pay for real estate taxes, snow removal, basically the general maintenance of the property. So you deduct that, and then you come up with the existing cap rate.
The cap rate, is that the income approach?
That's the income approach.
And that's the approach that you use most often with investment property or income property?
That's pretty much, not, I wouldn't say 100%, but right up there.
And could you explain to the jury, what is a cap rate?
Okay, cap rate is you take the gross income less the expenses. So now you get a net income. And then the investments are all graded differently. If you were an investor and you wanted to buy a Walgreens right now, the cap rates on Walgreens are 5.5 to 5 3/4. You divide that into the net income, and that'll give you a sales price. Next comes other single-tenant properties, and let's take a Dollar General, Advance Auto Parts. Those are going between 6.25 to 7.25. And then the next thing would be strip centers or multi-use buildings. And again, it's the same formula: gross income minus net income, and then what is the going cap rate. Those are going between 8.5 to as high as 10 or 11, and a lot depends on the risk. Basic cap rate is a risk reward, and that's why Walgreens are like having government bonds, and you get a payment once a month from the government because you hold a bond. That's how safe Walgreens purchases are if you buy a building that's being leased to Walgreens. The greater the risk, again, the cap rate goes up.
And are those the cap rates today that you've distributed that go from 4.5 or 5 for a Walgreens up to 10 or 11 for a more risky investment?
Yeah, about 5.5 to 6 for Walgreens, and then as high as I've seen as high as 18 and 20% for apartment buildings in areas that are high risk.
And is the cap rate essentially the rate of return on your investment over the life of the building?
It's what you would expect. First of all, it's a rate of return that you would expect the first year, and hopefully at least continue at that rate during the life of the building. In commercial real estate and apartments, just about almost, I can't think of anything in commercial real estate that doesn't have increases in rent. Some yearly, some once every five years. Walgreens, you get it once every 20 years, and then it goes once every 5 years. So each one is different, but you're buying at a rate you would accept today, and look for the increases down the road, give you a better return.
So, for instance, Walgreens, which is a large national organization that's very secure, investors will buy it with a 5.5% cap rate or 5.5% return.
Yes, they will.
Because it's safe.
Right. And they're not, if they borrow money against it, they're really not looking at cash flow as much as knowing they're going to get it, pay it off, and in 20 years have the building free and clear.
Yeah. Did I ask you what the value of City Center would have been if they would have been allowed to complete the project?
Yes.
And just so we're clear, you've seen the site plan for the buildings, which was going to be a 9-building development of about 21,600 square feet apiece.
Yes.
And you understand that that development was never allowed to be finished.
Yes.
but I asked you to come up with a value if it had been finished back in 07 or 08 for the project.
Yes.
And were you able to do that?
Yes, I was.
Could you tell the jury what sort of things did you have to review to do that?
Well, I had to go back, obviously in time, and find out what properties were being rented for, what properties were being sold, and then again on commercial real estate, usually right now about 98% of the time, the tenant pays real estate taxes and the common area maintenance around the building. So the investor usually has little or no extra cost besides the income.
Did you look at the actual leases for City Center that were in place?
Yes, I did.
And did you compare those leases to other lease rates for properties in the vicinity?
Yes, I did.
And did you prepare some notes and summaries as you were doing this?
Yes.
Would it be helpful to have your notes in front of you as we proceed?
Yes.
You know, I'd like to question just give the witnesses notes to refer to. Are those some of the notes
Some
that
of
you
them,
generated?
yes, some, but not the whole report was stapled.
So did you also go out and visit the site?
Yes, I did.
And did you walk through the site?
Yes, I did.
And based upon your review, were you able to come up with the lease totals for the building?
Based off the leases that I read, yes.
And did you also summarize those?
Yes.
It would be helpful that you have those to refer to as you proceed.
Yes.
And what was the total lease value that you came up with for the building?
The value at that time,
Here I'm talking about the rents.
$235,000.
Can we get clarification of which building you're talking about?
Well, what you came up with in your review?
The first building.
Yes.
Yes. $235,796.
235.
$796.
So is that the annual rent for the building?
Based on the leases that I had.
Now, you talked about gross rent versus net rent. Remember that?
Yes.
Would this be a net figure or a gross figure?
If I remember right, this is the net figure.
And why is that the net figure?
Because in the leases that I read, there was a figure for what they call common area maintenance, CAM, and majority of them had CAM as a separate figure.
So the tenants were paying for the maintenance and the taxes and the upkeep?
Yes.
Now, was this the actual rents that that first building was able to generate?
For the leases. I mean, there was 2 vacancies.
Right.
I remember that I was on supply leases for.
So there's 2 spots that were going to be residential that didn't get finished.
Right.
So this was when it was actually finished and actually leased.
Yes.
And then how did you use this number to come up with a value again?
I looked at the going cap rate at the time,
Which was what?
8%.
So back in 2007, thereabouts, when this project was slated to be completed, the cap rate would be 8%.
That's what I came up with.
And then using that cap rate, what did you come up with the value for the building?
$2,997,450.
And that's per building?
Yes.
And so an investor would be willing to pay almost $3 million for a building that would generate $235,000 a year in net rent.
Well, then I did put a reserve.
Is that correct?
That would be correct.
And I cut you off. Did I forget to make a subtraction?
Yeah, for the reserve.
Okay. And what's the reserve?
The reserve, I used at 4%. That was a combination of reserve cover expenses and lost vacancy.
Okay. So this is minus 4%?
Yes. And that came to 226.
Okay. So this number is actually 226?
226, 365.
Okay. 226, 365.
Yes.
And then that number divided by the 8%
Mm-hmm.
gets you to the $2,997,000.
Actually, $2,829,000. We were moving faster than I could think. $2,829,562.
And that 4% is just for additional expenses that you might come up with, a vacancy or
Right.
something that the landlord has to cover.
Right.
And then, were you able to determine what the value of the entire site would be, all 9 buildings when they're completed?
I came up with 25 million.
Objection or relevance?
The question was whether or not you came up with the value of all the 9 buildings.
Yes, so this was the first phase of a 9-building project. They're intending to complete all 9 buildings. And obviously they weren't able to complete it.
Your Honor, can we approach?
Yes.